One-ton axles are foundational to any hardcore build. Anything that's going to be pushing big power, big tires, or a combination of the two needs a set of 1-tons. And having a set of built tons under the truck, front and rear, was kind of, the first step for me. I found my axles, I've got them into the shop, I've stripped them down, and I'm waiting on parts to show up so I can start putting them back together. I went with a GM Dana 60 Kingpin passenger side drop front axle. That axle has a special place in my heart. It's got a lot of history. It was the axle that we all drooled over when I was building trucks back in the day. It was plentiful. It was available everywhere. There was tons of parts availability and aftermarket support, and you really couldn't break them. Matching it to the axle that's already in the Blazer would make a lot of sense when it came to parts interchangeability and redundancy and things like that. So I tracked down an axle and had it shipped out from New York. Thanks to Sam out of New York for boxing it up, sticking it in a crate, and shipping it out to me.
All right, there it goes. Off to California.
My buddy dragged it up from the shipping depot down south, and we used my neighbor's forklift to get it in the shop. And then the real work began. You see, this is a 40-year-old axle, and it probably had a very hard life under a service truck or a daily driver or who knows. So it was covered in, probably 48 pounds of grease and dirt. So I set about stripping that all down, getting it back down to bare metal so I could see what I was working with and what needed to be replaced.
Well, it is not clean, but it is burly. Oh, the glamorous side of rebuilding. I've managed to get the Dana 60 torn down quite a bit today. Oh man, this thing was filthy. I don't have a parts washer yet. I need to pick one up or find one. But yeah, you see my parts washer, it's right there. and right here, I'm the main engine behind the parts washing. Dana 60's coming down though, and it came apart a whole lot better than I expected. I fought like a dog to get the lower the lower knuckle bearing caps out on my old Dana 60 and my K30 Blazer. These ones just fell out. Maybe I've developed the technique. I don't know, but I stripped this down fairly quickly, and it's going to take me several days to get this thing into a clean enough state to reassemble. I've started working on some of the hub and bearing assemblies, but yeah, I've got quite a bit of work to do, and it's filthy.
And let's be honest, that thing's going to be carrying a massive Cummins 12-valve engine, and so I don't think I really can overbuild this guy. So I stripped it down. I got it all the way back down to bare metal. I replaced one of the Kingpins that had actually stripped out the inner C. So I got a new Kingpin and got the inner C all cherry red, dropped the new Kingpin in there and welded that guy in. So it's never going anywhere. I'm waiting on an E-locker to show up for the front. I'm going to be doing a Detroit in the rear. I found an AAM 11.5 inch that I'm going to be dropping in the rear. I would have gone with a 14-bolt full floater so that I had a matching front and rear set, but my buddy Nick with the Blazer had this axle sitting in his backyard waiting for a build, and fortunately my build came first, and so he sold me this axle. Massive ring gear, it's almost a foot across, 3 or 4 inch diameter tubes. It's a beast. But I'm not going to be dragging the Suburban over all that many rocks, and so clearance and weight weren't really that high of a concern for me. The benefit to the AAM comes in the fact that it already has disc brakes, dual piston disc brakes, and an internal drum brake / parking brake. That's going to save me some money up front because I will not need to do the disc brake conversion. I'm also going to be, like I mentioned, putting a Detroit in the rear. It's geared at 410, which is what I think I'm going to stay with. I haven't landed on that yet, but I have some parts coming to rebuild the front axle and refresh the rear axle. I hope to have these all done by the time that I'm able to pull the Burb in here so I can focus on stripping everything down and have 2 brand new axles.
Let's see what kind of gear oil comes out of this. I'll tell you what, it does not smell good. Actually looks to be really pretty clean. Oh, it's got a limited slip. So that is a limited slip differential. You can see the clutch pack right there, which is good news. I didn't know it was gonna have a limited slip in it. Nice. And is there a magnet? Not that I'm seeing anywhere. This thing looks to be in great shape. In addition to being an absolute brute of an axle, the GM Dana 60 one-ton front axle is very easily service or field serviceable. You don't need a ton of specialized tools to work on them. The hub nut that sets your bearing preload is pretty much the only specialized tool, and even that can be replaced with maybe a chisel or a punch and a rock. The design is massively robust. You've got an overbuilt knuckle that wraps over the inner C. You've got the Kingpin, which centers the wheel, and you've got this bearing, this load-carrying bearing in the bottom that's sealed and will probably never need any other attention. I haven't yet decided what I'm going to be doing for steering arms, for high steer and crossover, or what various configurations I'm going to be running on those. So I'm just installing the Kingpin caps at this point without the springs, so I can get them apart and get those arms on when they arrive if I choose to go that way. Everything's getting bolted together, it's going together nicely, throwing new bearings and hardware in. And soon the axle shafts are going to show up, the locker's going to be here, and I'm going to be able to get this thing buttoned up and back together, ready to go under the Burb.
Unlike more modern designs, the GM Kingpin does not use ball joints. It uses a Kingpin top and a pressed-in fitting on the bottom. The Kingpin is... Are you serious right now? My axle just fell off. Okay, where were we? Talking about the Kingpin before it fell off, the axle here. But one of the reasons I like the Kingpin is it's simple. It's pretty much a non-replaceable part. You've got some minor stuff that you can replace, but let's be honest, the bearings are never really going to be replaced unless you neglect this. You can break the poly up top. If you do and you want to go to something stiffer, you can either add washers to the top of the spring, or you can put in a bronze bushing. Easy, simple, hardcore, perfect for what I'm looking for in the Burb. It's been a productive few weeks. Not a lot of glamorous work with a lot of wire wheel and degrease and brake parts cleaner and face shields and all the other paraphernalia that goes with making these look new again. But I think they look pretty good. I fixed the inner C's on these with the Kingpin. I replaced the calipers on both sides. I replaced the rotors on both sides and the pads. I'm waiting on the chromoly axles to come from Yukon, and the rebuild kit is over there ready for the E-locker to show up, and I can swap this ring gear into the new E-locker so that this guy will be all done and ready. It will need some steering arms and maybe maybe hydraulic assist. If I can scrounge up the funds for that, that will be a really nice addition, but I don't know if it's necessary right now. And then moving on to this guy, sticking with the gears I've got the Detroit coming. The axle shafts are going to be the same. Those are sitting over there. I replaced the pads and rotors. I cut the disc brake dust shield all the way down so it is just the backing plate to the e-brake, because I hated how those things looked. And I cut everything down. This is going to be getting the perches welded on when it's back under the Suburban. I can actually see the angle and width that I need to be at. This is getting the Detroit, and it will be, for all intents and purposes, finished apart from welding on the hangers. And this is the carrier out of this guy. This is an open carrier that I've removed all the stuff from, but I'm keeping around so that when it comes time to go into specifics, I'll have some props that we can talk about, so I can show you guys how an open differential would differ from, let's say, the selectable locker that I'm putting in up front. If you want to see some more information on axle builds, I have a whole series that I'm going to link up here. I'll put a playlist together that has the Dana 60 from when I received it and tore it down, to putting the E-locker in, welding on all the brackets for the 4-link swap, and then getting that back under the Blazer. So I'll link that up here for you guys to go take a look at. And in the meanwhile, give me a subscribe. I've got a lot of content coming up. But yeah, lots of work to do still. But it's coming together, and I think when the truck is able to get back in here, I'm going to have 2 axles and an engine and transmission ready to go back underneath. So I'm fired up.